Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. I played it on the PS4, I guess it's also available on the PC. This is the first game, real game, by Ninja Theory since DMC, which I know a lot of people didn't really love, but hey, they're back, and this is a pretty interesting title. We'll start with the first interesting concept, and that is this game is not only there to tell a story, but it's also meant to make people aware of what psychosis is and what it's like for the people suffering it. Even before the menu, there is a screen that says that they worked with both psychologists and individuals who have suffered psychosis to help produce this game. And that rolls at the end credits as well. And if you're looking at the beginning credits when you're starting the game, you can see that they had a mental health expert on staff. So let's delve into the story, which first is about a character named Senua who is basically trying to enter Helheim, so it's very Norse-based. And she's entering Helheim with the severed head of her lover who was killed while she was in the woods. Now, while she was in the woods, she was there for a purpose, and she was clearly gone for quite a while, but apparently the reason she has his head is because you need that to try and bring someone back from hell. For Hela, the goddess of what is Helheim, to give you that person back, and you have to make a trade or something like that. And to put it simply, this is her journey through Helheim, and what is interesting is not necessarily the storytelling itself, although I do think it is very good. It's narrated, very heavily narrated. And she does have multiple narrators. You've got Druth and you've got the unnamed narrator, which I have no idea who that's supposed to be. Druth is a man she met while she was in the wilds, and he had escaped a Viking clan because he was held prisoner by them. And he told her all sorts of interesting stories, and the cool thing is you can find these beacons throughout the world, and he'll tell you some Norse mythology. Not in a boring way, but in the proper storytelling manner. Now, the psychosis part is very important because a lot of the stuff in this game, a lot of things they allude to, specifically the darkness, is a metaphor for psychosis, for her mental illness specifically. Whatever that may be, they don't really specify it, but the entire time you're going through, the narrator's trying to talk, or Druth is trying to talk, and you're hearing these whispers, and they're encouraging her. Some of them are encouraging her. Some of them are very negative to her. There's another one that's much angrier, much violent, less whispery, deep gravelly, and it gets a little distracting, which it's supposed to be, and it actually helps really get you to just believe that you are this character and feel her suffering. And the reality of it is, you don't know what is necessarily real or fake at any point in time. There's all sorts of interesting things. A story-related mechanic is the rot, which is also being infected by the darkness, and it infects your character's right hand, and basically every time you die, which is actually fairly hard to die, for the most part. But every time you die, it extends up her arm and will eventually reach her head, and when that happens, supposedly it's permadeath. I have heard that it doesn't actually create permadeath, so it's hard to say. I didn't run into a permadeath situation. I did die a few times. I do want to say before I go into the audio, man, the story, I do love this story. I do love the mythology. I really, really enjoy the way they tell this story and make you experience the whole thing. Okay, but that's besides the point. Let's go on to the audio, and I don't normally just sit here and praise a game's sound design, but I am going to fully praise this game's sound design. It's astounding. I generally think sound is just there to enhance the experience, whereas in this game it really is part of the experience. They recommend it at the beginning of this game, and I will too. I do recommend a good pair of over-the-ear headphones. Playing it that way really helps, especially when the whispers are going on, just the general speaking, because all the voiceover work is excellent, but the sound effects in general were amazing. To the point where I had to take off my headphones at one point because I thought there was actually thunder outside. Kind of amazing. And it's not just that, the music is astounding. I already mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. The voiceover work is truly excellent in this game. It really helps sell this game. The audio in this game is actually some of the best I've ever heard, and it truly warranted wearing headphones. A lot of other games, headphones on or off doesn't really matter as much. It truly mattered in this game. So as for the gameplay mechanics are basically, there's a lot of walking and not a ton of exploring. The world is not very open, but you can explore to find the things where Druth explains Norse mythology to you. But that's about it for like exploration and collectibles. There's a decent amount of some puzzle solving, but it's pretty basic puzzle solving overall. It's finding the right angle to match up like a bridge and then make it somehow come into reality, or do that to somehow unlock a door, which again, that ties into the whole Psychosis thing, because even the voices say, does this really matter? Is this really doing anything? Is it really gonna work? And they say that and you're like, does it really matter? Because some of these runes I'm finding to unlock the door just look like random crap. There is combat to this game. It's a third-person action game, sort of. The combat is fairly simplistic. I'm not going to say it's crazy in depth. It can be crazy challenging at times, to the point where you're like, okay, I've killed about 60 of these guys. Can we please stop? This is getting a bit long and drawn out. The reality of it is there's not a huge variety in the gameplay. There's a lot of walking around the worlds, walking from point A to point B, getting into fights along the way. There are a few different types of puzzles throughout, but a lot of them just reappear and not a huge variety. So as for the controls, I think the controls are excellent. I think they work incredibly well in this game. I didn't have any problems with the movement or the combat. It was incredibly responsive. Now, like I said, it's not a really in-depth combat system. There is a level to depth to it that you may not initially get, but if you play around with certain elements of the control scheme, you can do things that you didn't know you could do originally, like a charge attack or a dodge attack. And that's one thing I'll say, and this kind of ties into gameplay as much as it does the controls. Hellblade does not hold your hand in regard to the controls and what you can or cannot do, or tell you how to do things. There are 0 button prompts. You have to go up to that ladder and you're like, I don't know, is it X, is it square, is it circle? I don't know, but you find out. First time you go into combat, you have no clue what the strike button is, what the guard button is, how to dodge, so it's pretty intense. And lastly, the graphics. Oh, the graphics. It's a beautiful game, like a truly beautiful game. I was really blown away at the detail. Specifically, Senua herself, I mean, the stunning amount of detail and the change from the character model at the beginning to the end is amazing. Because she shows the damage she has taken, or if the rot has grown, you can see it. And it'll sound silly, but it's a small detail, and I think they add realism to a game like this. Senua's dreads. Yes, she has dreadlocks, but the detail in them, you can see hairs coming off and whatnot. This game shows that level of detail. You can see the pain, the fear in her face, things like that. It's just amazing, honestly. I was really blown away by the graphics in this game. The only 2 real complaints I have with this game, I already mentioned one a little bit, and that's that some of the fights just go on and on and on, and it gets a bit old. You spend a very long time in some of those fights. And then the second thing I would say is a slightly more major complaint is there are times where in combat, your camera turns into your worst enemy. There were a couple of times where I kind of had my back to the wall and all of a sudden I couldn't see anything apart from the wall, and obviously that's a problem. Now, I wouldn't say either of these really ruined the game, but they definitely are not awesome. So I think it's pretty obvious that I fully recommend this game. I really do. I think it's amazing that they're telling a great story and addressing the problems with like mental health. The story itself is so worth experiencing. The fact that they're addressing psychosis through a Viking tale and telling a great story on top of that is fantastic. Plus, I just enjoyed playing the game. The controls were great and just the way you experience everything is excellent. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what your favorite Viking video game is? I know there's not a ton out there. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.